G'day people, I'm back again. Had a day off yesterday, or mostly, and also had a bit of a restriction on my account, which means that I can't post as much as I want. I think there's about 9 posts a day you can do. So since I had that issue, I did not do any post updates really. Now looking at Bitcoin, if you recall my past posts where I said there was a bump and run strategy taking place, and this yellow line pretty much is the neckline for this bump and run, as well as the other one as a trend line. And they both had confluence and so on. And then you can see how that neckline became support as well. And we've got the fib levels and so on, and the 10 weekly, 10 weekly moving average? That one there was also support. Now I'm going to show a few scenarios which all tells me that we're bullish and that we're still going to go to the upside. So in one of my charts, this is the weekly chart. I draw my lines, and I'll just get rid of these. Basically, that was one of the key level lines as well as the other one, and I had this resistance level here as well. But what's most important is, let's get this right. Let's see how I can remove these lines for the time being. I want those. Yeah, I'll leave it as that. And what I did with these lines is I went to the weekly, and we look at the weekly chart, and you can see clearly where my resistance, that was that previous resistance from the far left. Okay, so that's my weekly resistance, and I'll just make that white. Okay, so that was my weekly resistance, and then we have another weekly resistance there, which is the fader one, and this is the most important one here, as far as I see. This yellow line. Actually, I can make it a bit more accurate. And there's a white line there, and this value of this yellow line, 59,000, and so on. So I did talk about the issue of we need to close this week above this white line, and preferably above the yellow. The fact that we're likely to close above this weekly resistance is really good. So that's a bullish sign. I do have this in the weekly indicator, and I have a crossover here, which is pretty good as well. So the momentum is to the upside, and as long as we are above, this red line is above the 50% level, we are fine. It's not a reversal. So if this red line was to come down to the 50% or lower, it will be a changing trend for the weekly, and that's when I'll be going out. But not to be worried at this point. What we have here is the next level of resistance, and we just poked our head out of it, and we're proceeding upwards. So the key level, as I said, last one was this yellow line. If we can break that, we're on the up and go. So that's the weekly. And this is the daily, and you can see how that reflects. And now we're just passing that second weekly resistance, and we're on to the top layer. And the daily indicators are very bullish. So that's from my candlestick perspective and the levels of resistance support. Now we're going to go to formations. So the formations that I have here, if I was to put this level on the left, you can see that although it's a 15-minute chart, it gives you a clear picture that this was the channel, that was the bottom support. All I did was move it to the top, and there's confluence. So what happened was with price, when price came up, it found there's resistance, and when it broke decisively, it kept on going up. And obviously this is a broadening wedge on the downside, and also part of this channel is a bullish formation. The first drop here is an inverted head and shoulders, and then we hit the inverted head and shoulders target, we drop down to the bottom of the channel, we have this broadening wedge, and so there's a few formations that took place in there. So why wouldn't that happen here? So what I've done here is I broke it down to the smaller parts, as I can see, and I traded some of these, especially the one down here, and this neckline played its role. Along with that 10 weekly moving average, and I explained that last time. And this hit its target, pulled back, did another broadening wedge formation, and now we're here. Now let's do this. If I enable this, if I'm going to use this scenario, I get this line here. Okay, I'm going to draw this line, and it's not going to be perfect, but that's good enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get this white line and see the confluence. I'm going to try this method. So I'm going to move this to the top, all the way to the top. Okay. Now if I move this down here, doesn't make sense, but to the top it does. Now if I can just remove these yellow lines for the time being. What I do see, besides the broadening, the bump and run strategy continuing on its path, I do also see that this could possibly be a retest of this trend line or the channel. Maybe you can say, okay, whoops. Maybe we can also use this formation as a main structure, but I don't think that's the case. I think this method is proving to us that this structure is getting tested as support. So when price came down, we did the A, B, C formation. Now we had this in between activity, and now this could be an inverted head and shoulders, but it's probably not. And now we're testing this. We're testing this structure, and now it's likely to continue on. That fits the the bump and run strategy as well. So the bump and run strategy does talk about price going continue on, and it's throw back to the trend line, which it did, and it passed it clearly, and now we are going to slowly move up. So this structure is not only tested the bump and run neckline, it's also tested this channel, this potential channel. So if I was to get get this line and replicate it across, if I move this across, even that makes sense. Resistance, breaks it, retest, and then on it goes. So there's this channel is coming to formation. And the final bit to this, if I was to get rid of it, actually, let's just move across to the left so I can make a point. That one. This broadening wedge which was pretty much started right there within the structure, found the test, and then broke up to the upside. Now, if this is a broadening wedge, a macro broadening wedge, we can do this, can't we? We can do that, and we can say the middle of the broadening wedge, roughly, I'm going to just fix that up. So if I just get rid of this line for the time being, you can see that this is likely to be a broadening wedge as well. And if was to break this, and it's just broke it, if this was a broadening wedge and the formation is like that, where this is the middle, this is also being tested as well, perfectly. So there's so much that can potentially, everything that what I'm looking at from in many different perspectives, it's bullish. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I do believe that we are continuing on the upside. If we look on the weekly, let's look on the weekly, it's still going up. As long as it holds this, by end of Sunday, holds this level, we're fine. And the final piece of the puzzle, not that one, I did had this line as another way of looking at things, and I don't need that. What I want to show you is this. In my previous posts, I did talk about this parallel resistance trend line, and we are broken it, so it's likely that we will test it along that line. So we potentially test it around here, and then price goes up. And I'll make that white so you can see what happened there. Whoops. So that was what I was saying there. So price can, but we find a bit of a resistance here, which is fine. And now another little broadening wedge and another breakout. Might test this trend line a bit, but everything that I've been looking at, as you can see, has many perspectives, many ways of looking at a chart, and they're all telling me they were bullish. So I'll leave it at that. All the best. Cheers.